Hi people, I'm Daniel, one of the artists that works at the Royal Institute of British Architects, and today I'm going to talk about making temporary 3D sculptures of buildings out of everyday objects around you and transforming them into 2D drawings of different types. Today we're looking at recycle and redraw. Great, so today's video is going to focus on two different stages. Stage one, making things temporarily out of objects that are everyday objects around you, recycled objects, things that you find in your cupboard or outside. Stage two is taking those 3D objects that you've made, those architectural buildings, and converting them into different types of drawings. For each stage, I'm going to suggest multiple ways of working, which you can combine up. So you could take one of the 3 or 4 ways of working for the first 3D section and combine it with one of the 3 or 4 ways of working for the drawing section, and you could mix it up. So you could do the same starting point with different endpoints, or the same endpoint with different starting points. And what's essential here is all the suggestions I'm giving you are easy to change up to suit you. So you can simplify them or make them more complicated. Originally, this came from a workshop that was running at RIBA for 11 to 15-year-olds. But we run those workshops for people of all different ages. And really, if you're working at home, a great setup for this is working in groups, pair work, family work, teamwork. We're really keen to see the outcome of it. So please do share it with us on any social media using the hashtag #ArchitectureAtHome, or you can tweet us directly on RIBA Learning. So let's get on with the first section, the architectural element of this. The aim of this, by the way, is something that's very temporary. You could start in your house, in your kitchen, using the everyday pots and pans that are around, using the tins and things from your cupboard, using your recycle box. Any of those objects can come together. And for the initial activity, I'm going to suggest you try to create a structure that looks like a well-known building, a building from anywhere around the world. Here I am in my workshop. In my workshop, I actually make and customize guitars, and I've got lots of odds and ends, so I could just make something really tiny and small instead of working big. Or we could go outside, for example. Working outside, we can use anything that's around. Again, starting point would be creating something that is from a well-known building. Or we could just use the actual building blocks that we have at home as toys to create buildings with. Once you've done the everyday object, the thing that we recognise, it'll be great to then extend it to your own type of building. What I suggest here is you think about the purpose of the building. Is it a small building? Is it a large building? Does it have lots of people coming and going in it? Is it an open plan? Think, for example, could it be a hospital or a shopping mall? Is it a school? Is it a house? Is it somewhere that people need to spend lots of time? Is it somewhere where people go on occasion? Is it somewhere with grounds around the outside, or is it part of a bigger skyline, for example? The next stage is to take photos of the architectural models that you've made. Now, a bit of advice here is don't just take the photo straight on, try moving the camera all the way around. Think about your camera being like a person walking on the floor, walking through your architectural model. What happens then is when you look back at the photos, because we're used to looking at photos from head height, suddenly the sculpture looks much bigger, like a real size thing. You might even try flying over the top like a bird flying over your sculpture. The next job is to print out your photos ready to turn into drawings. Here I'm using some tracing paper to take what is my architectural form and start turning it into something more resembling a building. For this one, which was based on the Taj Mahal, I'm not actually going to make my drawing Taj Mahal-like. I'm just being inspired by the structure that I've built. I'm also going to put in some extra details, I think like pathways maybe, architectural things outside to give it some scale, some trees. Once you finish your tracing, you can pull away the photo. So this is my rough sketch ready to add more details to. One alternative to tracing paper is to use greaseproof paper, baking paper, and roll that over. And another alternative is to take your image to a window, and then when you put some white paper over the top, you'll be able to see through. You could take your drawing and put it straight onto a coloured bit of paper. I really like how the tracing paper mutes the colours behind it. Or what you could do is take your original image or multiple printouts of it, hold it against a coloured piece of paper, even use some paper clips to pin it together. And then cut out shapes from it. For example, here I'm just going to follow around the edge, a bit like a silhouette. That gives me a block piece which will roughly fit to make a sky, either in front if we wanted to collage it there, or now to stick it behind onto another colour. I really like back painting these, which means you turn it over and add the colour on the back side. Then when you flip it back, the colour is muted still because it's behind the thickness of the tracing paper, and your black lines stand out over it. I also like being a bit messy and not worrying if I go over the lines a bit. I'll give you a quick example of that. I'm just going to keep my colours quite simple. What you're trying to do is give an impression of a real life building, but it's all come from the structure that you created with your 3D random assortment of objects, be that in the house or in the garden. Another option would be to print out a background like a sky and grass, or maybe your building you're designing is for another planet. You could have space and an earthy rocky surface. Then you cut your photo out, stick it onto a collaged up background made of the different textures that you want. You could even then add details to this by putting stickers on, or photographs cut from magazines or other things you printed out. I really like this write-on film, OHP paper. You can buy it at most stationery shops. If you put that over your image with a permanent marker, you can make permanent lines on your image, which can then be used to add coloured acetate to the back. Then flip your image over. On the back you can use bits of coloured acetate to add some colour. It doesn't have to be neat. You could glue this or tape this down. I find that tape is normally a bit of a neater way to do it, especially if you have magic tape or invisible tape. The reason we turned it round is the colour goes on top of these black lines and makes the black lines a bit fainter. But now we're looking at the back of it. So in a moment, once it's all taped down, I'll be able to flip it round and the black lines will be back on top and stand out brighter again. And then I can stick this to a window and let the light shine through. If you don't have the OHP paper, you might have one of these plastic document wallets where you could just slip your picture inside and then draw on top of this. And then when you pull your image out, there you go. You could add colour direct to your images using felt tip pens, pencils. You could even use watered down acrylics or watercolour paints. Well, I hope that has given you lots of ideas of ways forward to explore the architecture around you, your own architecture from your mind. Again, I suggested starting with buildings that are recognisable and then evolving it into buildings of your own construction, your own design, anything you can really think of. But you could take this same process with anything you've made in 3D, photograph it and convert it into 2D. There might be other ways you can think of in making these in 2D. So please, again, if you've got any ideas, if you've made anything, please do share it with us with the hashtag architecture@home or tweet us direct on RIBA Learning.